Everybody, it is noon. I want to be super respectful of your time. Thank you for spending the time to come and attend our wellness workshop. For those attending in person, it's great to see some faces for real. And then for those of you attending virtually, thank you so much. My name is Erin, and I'm one of the dietitians with My Way to Health. Today, the wellness workshop and cooking demonstration is called Spice Up Your BBQ. And it's just that we're going to be grilling all kinds of foods for you to try today or for you to try when you get a chance at home too. So before we get into the food side of things, I wanted to just kind of restate our mission. For those of you who are not familiar, My Way to Health mission is to help individuals champion strength, overcome barriers, and create supportive networks to improve their health and well-being. So as a benefit to you at WashU, we are here to support you in whatever that means for you. We'll talk a little bit about our programming offerings as well. Before we do that, this is our team. So we are located at the Center for Healthy Weight and Wellness. Dr. Denise Welkley is who all of our research is based, or all of our programming is based on her decades of research. Holly is here in the back doing check-in. She is our manager. Lisa is our lead dietitian. Maggie's here manning mission control. We have a couple dietitians virtually attending as well, Allie and Carla, and Rashonda is the other dietitian. So I imagine if you haven't worked with us in some capacity, these are our faces. Please, if you see us, say hi as well. I mentioned our programming. So we do cooking demonstrations and wellness workshops, yay, but we also have ways to support you one-on-one. So first of which is our wellness consultations. So this is a way to get individualized support. You meet with us one-on-one for 30-minute sessions. We do in-person appointments, we do Zoom, and we do phone appointments as well. And we talk about anything health or wellness-wise that is important to you and help create goals to accomplish that. We also have a program called My Way to a Healthy Weight. That program is a bit more intensive. It's a year-long program specifically designated to help with weight loss if that's a goal of yours. To participate in it, you need to be a benefits eligible employee with a BMI of 25 or greater and a desire to lose weight. What the program entails is the first 16 weeks or 4 months is one-on-one weekly sessions with a designated dietitian. The next 16 weeks is weekly group support in small group setting. You get one-on-one individualized support throughout that. And then the final portion of that programming is 4 months of larger groups monthly is how that's meet. If you are interested, it's a bit timely. We have an orientation July 26th and 27th, right? And yeah, that's required before you can participate in the program because the next cohort will start in August. So we'll have information at the end if you're interested in that. But I wanted to make you aware of just all the ways to work with us. So the good today. What we're going to talk about are ways to, ooh, did I do that? Oh. Didn't mean to call you out like that. I just want to make sure I didn't bump it out. So we're going to identify strategies to help identify healthy foods to eat at a cookout or a barbecue. We're going to discuss the alternative seasonings and spices you can incorporate to flavor your food and the health benefits that come along with that. We're going to also talk a bit about foodborne illness or food poisoning and how we can minimize that because that's really one great way to ruin a cookout. So to help minimize that, and then additionally understand recommended intakes for some of these nutrients we're going to talk about today. Before I talk more, I wanted to hear from you guys. First from those in the room, and then we'll get to the chat as well for those attending virtually. But I want to know this time of year, there's cookouts and barbecues. I want to know what foods you guys are looking forward to most. So, anyone in the room, raise your hand if you want to share. Yeah. Kebabs. Kebabs. Oh yeah. Kebabs are great for the grill. Add peppers, onions, chicken, beef, whatever you want to use. Anyone else? Grilled salmon. Grilled salmon. Oh, so good on the grill, isn't it? Yeah. My father-in-law does like a cedar plank to sit it on. Oh yeah. Anyone else? Grilled veggies. Grilled veggies. Yeah. Sometimes they're so nutritious, but it's a really fun way to give them a facelift a little bit and have them in a different way, and they taste different. It's a different experience. We'll get to have some grilled veggies today. Anyone else in the room? All right, Allie, in the chat, what are people saying about what foods they're looking forward to?
Fresh corn on the cob.
Corn on the cob. So good on the grill. Yeah.
Pizza on the grill.
Pizza on the grill. I've never done that. That's a fun way to do that.
We got hot dogs, hamburgers, pork steaks, pulled pork,
The
grilled fish.
Awesome. Right, yeah. A lot to look forward to this time of year. It's such a fun way to be able to be outside and just have a different flavor and experience of cooking as well. And your house doesn't have to get as hot. Today's not a great example because you're still doing it inside, but if you have an outdoor grill, it's great too. So just get a different environment. So when we're talking about the nutrition piece, if you have health goals in mind when it comes to food choices, it can be really helpful for you to know things to be on the lookout, but also things to include when it comes to cookouts, gatherings, barbecues, all of that good stuff. So the three things that can often be nutrients of concern, if you will, things that can be potentially linked diet-wise to negative health outcomes. Sodium, fat, and salt. Oh, sodium, fat, and sugar. Sodium and salt are the same. So these ingredients or components of foods can potentially be linked to things like diabetes when consumed in excess, hypertension or high blood pressure, certain types of cancers. So dietary guidelines really show that when the bulk of your calories and nutrients are coming from nutrient-dense foods, and we'll talk about some of those foods, and the intake of salt, sugar, and fat is at a minimum, there can be positive health outcomes and potentially the risk of adverse health outcomes from things like all-cause mortality, cancers, diabetes, heart disease is lessened. So salt specifically, the goal intake is trying to keep things between 1,500 and 2,000 milligrams, which might sound like a pretty big number, but a teaspoon of salt is 2,300 milligrams. And one thing I want to point out is that about 75% of the sodium intake in American diets now come from the salt shaker. So I often hear in wellness consultations, people be like, don't worry, don't even touch the salt shaker, which I think is a great way to minimize sodium. But there can be some sneaky foods that we'll get into that can be really high in sodium, and you don't even need a salt shaker in sight. When it comes to sugar, the dietary guidelines recommend that less than 10% total of your calories come from added sugars. And then saturated fat, the goal is, again, less than 10% of your total calories. The dietary guidelines has this 85-15 approach, where 85%, the bulk of what we eat during the day is coming from really nutritious foods. 15% can be left over for some of these foods that we're trying to limit. So it's not this all or nothing approach where we are completely cutting out these foods we're going to talk about that might be sneaky sources, but more so having this idea of context of what percentage of your day is coming from those foods. How it shakes out is about 250 to 350 calories a day are allotted for that extra 15%. So, sneaky sources of sodium. A lot of processed meats, things like hot dogs and deli meats, those are really high in salt, and you don't need to use salt shaker at all. Condiments, marinades, things like hot sauce, for example. One of the recipes provided, the last one, I used straight up hot sauce like it calls for. sodium intake is content is super, super high, but then I get some alternatives that are very as well. So those can be sneaky sources. Marinating your meat is a pretty common thing to do when it comes to barbecuing and grilling. So we've got some recipes for low sodium marinades as well. When it comes to sugar, sure, dessert type foods, but also things like baked beans and barbecue sauce can be sources of added sugar as well. And then saturated fat, higher saturated fat foods are going to come from red meat, fried foods, but then some of these side dishes too, like maybe potato salad, egg salad made with a mayonnaise, also potato chips. That's a pretty easy thing to offer to bring to a cookout, but it can be a high source of both sodium and saturated fat. So it can be really helpful to know where things are coming from so that you can make either different choices or provide another option for you if that's something that you are working on. So herbs, spices, and that's where those come in, because the reality is fat, sugar, and salt are flavor. They make our food taste really good. We're not eating them because things taste bad, right? So if we're going to remove those items or lessen that in a recipe or a food choice, we need to have more flavor there so that the food is still enjoyable. So adding and playing around with different types of herbs and spices can help with that piece of it. We also know that foods that are flavorful are more satisfying. So if weight management is a goal of yours, having foods that have a lot of flavor are going to be more satisfied, potentially in lesser quantities to help maintain your calorie deficit. Additionally, things like cinnamon and nutmeg and cardamom, those offer the essence of sweetness without needing sugar as well, so it can mirror that flavor without the sugar actually being there. Additionally, herbs and spices can have such great health benefits. So not only is it helping remove possibly some nutrients that can be detrimental to our health, but it's going to have some value added benefits as well. So here's an extensive list, but if you look through, you can see that different herbs and spices are gonna offer some different benefits. Cinnamon, for example, can really be beneficial for blood sugars and having an anti-diabetic effect, specifically in people who have type 2 diabetes. It can be very beneficial. Sage has a lot of benefits for memory, whereas peppermint can help alleviate nausea and even some IBS pain. However, peppermint is not recommended if you have GERD. So there's some nuance there that we would definitely talk about in a long conversation. But turmeric raise your hand real quick in the audience if you've heard of turmeric health benefits. It's gotten a lot of attention. And then also I think there's a hand raising in the Zoom if you've heard that as well. The anti-inflammatory effects of turmeric has been well studied. So that can be a really benefit use. And it is gorgeous too, a really beautiful yellow color way to add some visual aesthetic to your food as well. Cayenne pepper in general has a lot of antioxidant properties, can be really helpful with pain management. Pepper is also incredibly potent and flavorful, especially when used in different capacities in cooking. It can really help in add a lot of dynamics to the foods that you're cooking as well. Ginger, it has anti-inflammatory and anti-nausea effects as well. And then garlic, rosemary, cloves, oregano, those all have different benefits from antioxidant to immune function. So much like when it comes to fruits, vegetables, all the other great foods we encourage, variety is going to help give you kind of the blanket. You'll get multiple benefits the more you use and the more variety you incorporate. So if you're like me, this might not come super naturally to just grab a spice off the spice rack and be like, this goes well with chicken. So I found a resource for you all to show what different herbs and spices might go best with, depending on what you're cooking. So here we've got different proteins and possible flavor combinations that could pair really well. I also have a version of this available to you in the handouts as well. But not even just the protein, the veggies and things like that, we can get really creative. You don't just have to use salt and pepper on your vegetables. You can get a lot of flavor dynamics by trying garlic and sage with your mushrooms instead or something like that. So this can be a great way to offer variety If anyone has herb gardens going right now too, it can be a fun thing to experiment with different flavors of the fresh herbs too. So I have a recipe here. This will be provided too, but I wanted to point out a way that you can make your own salt-free seasoning. So there's kind of a blanket recipe, and I've used it today too. So 3 teaspoons each of garlic and onion powder. These can be great ways to add flavor without the salt. We know there's the salt version, garlic salt, onion salt, but these are the powder versions where we still get the flavor without adding in the salt. 2 teaspoons of some kind of dry herb. So it could be oregano or basil or thyme, whatever flavor you like. 2 teaspoons of what's called a wild card. So it can be paprika or coriander. I use coriander today. And then a teaspoon each of ground pepper, and then some kind of heat, whether it's cayenne pepper or chili powder, red pepper flakes. So off to the right-hand side, there is some versions of like the ways to mix this based on maybe a flavor combination like Mediterranean or fajitas or Cajun style. So those can be helpful. You add all of the dry ingredients together. You can keep it in a sealed container for up to 6 months. So a little bit will go a long way. You can continue to use that. All right. So we're gonna get into our first recipe, which are shrimp skewers. And actually something that just came to mind, does anyone have a shellfish allergy here? We were prepared to help with that. We don't have to worry about it. So when you select a protein for a cookout, there is a lot to consider. First might be like what people like to eat, but from the nutrition side of things, choosing a leaner protein, things that are naturally lower in saturated fat can be a great way to not have to worry about one of those ingredients. So today we're using shrimp. Shrimp is a great source of omega-3 fatty acids, antioxidants, B12, choline, all great kinds of nutrients. And what I have here is shrimp that was frozen, and then I thawed it in a bowl of water for 10 minutes. Aldi, Lisa, let me know. Their fresh section, never frozen, they have peeled, deveined, tailed off fresh shrimp that's amazing. It's so great. I only had frozen available to me. I went to Dearborn to shop, and they didn't have fresh shrimp, but it is super simple too. If you don't know how to devein a shrimp, they're already ready to go. So here are these shrimp. So I've got shrimp, and then what we're gonna do is create a marinade. I have tomato sauce, it's 1/4 cup, and I did no salt added, which was an option at the grocery store, knowing that we were really going to roll the dice here, but it still tastes good. I've got olive oil. I also am adding cayenne pepper. I decreased from the original recipe because that brings a lot of heat. And so what I recommend, if this is like a new seasoning for you, the hotter one, the more that you start with less, maybe 1/8 of a teaspoon, and you can always go up from there. I will say the earlier you use it in the cooking process, those flavors really develop and get bolder than if you use it on the end of the cooking process. There's also a small amount of salt, 1/2 teaspoon, ground basil, balsamic vinegar, and then this recipe calls for a whole lot of garlic, and you can buy the bulk, certainly, but our Aldi friend again. This is in the refrigerator section. There are like 43 about cloves of garlic here that are peeled and ready to go. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna mince this up really quickly. I'm going to do a really fine chop and then come back through and mince this. But you can do, you like the jarred garlic. It doesn't have quite the same health benefits as using fresh though. In the recipe provided too, it suggests for the garlic cloves to blanch them. What that does is take some of the like spice and intensity out of the garlic. So what you do is you bring water to a boil and you throw them in for like 3 minutes and then set them to the side and they'll be ready to go. So we've got some garlic in there. And then I'm just gonna give this all a stir. And what you do is normally you would let this marinate for about at least 30 minutes. It can be longer, but do it in the refrigerator. You can use marinades as well for basting throughout the cooking process, but anything that has come into contact with a raw protein like shrimp, you have to discard at the end. We don't save it for later. So I'm just going to show here is a wooden skewer. You can use metal ones as well. They do get hot. Feels obvious, but I want to mention. If you're using a wooden one, soak it for about 20 minutes so they don't get all smoky. And then to thread a shrimp, you can start at the base of the tail and then push it through the top. Here we go, like this. If you have larger shrimp and they spin around on one, you can do two. So start a little bit further over and then do the end of the tail and the top of the shrimp as well. So go and we let that sit for 30 minutes, and Lisa's cooking these off right now. They should cook super quickly, a few minutes each side. How are things going as far as, I turned our grills to between 350 and 450. I think I did 375. That's considered medium high heat.
So they're getting a nice little grill mark on them right now. And with shrimp, you can, what's nice compared to something like maybe steak or a chicken is that you can see really visibly when they're starting to cook. So you're looking for them to start to tighten up into more of a C shape. And they're moving from that bluish color into more of a pink opaque color. So I'm keeping a close eye on that. Nobody wants a rubbery shrimp.
Or and so for these today, I let them marinate for about 30 minutes and then I put them on their skewers. Something that can be nice if you're the one hosting. If you're the one hosting a barbecue, you can skewer these up in the morning and let them sit in the refrigerator in the marinade, and then it'll be a really quick transfer to the grill when it's ready to go. And again, if you're using a grill outdoors and you have a way to measure temperature, it's between 350 and 450. Otherwise, it's like a medium high heat. I just washed my hands. I'm changing my gloves because I touched raw fish. So switch those over. We're going to talk a little bit more about cross-contamination, but being prepared to use separate utensils, cook surfaces, but also cutting boards and things like that can be really important for minimizing cross-contamination. And then I'm going to hop back in to the presentation. While these are finishing up, it smells so good.
That smells really good.
And then we'll get the samples out to those of you who are here, and then those of you who are on Zoom. I think you can still make it here for us. There we go. So we talked a little bit about the protein source can be a really great way to just off the bat minimize things like saturated fat and salt with how you are choosing to cook and marinate, but also just the source itself. Side dishes can also be high sources of salt and fat, and sometimes sugar as well. When we're talking about things like we talked about the potato, egg salad, chips, French fries, baked beans, mac and cheese, they're delicious. But if health is a consideration of yours, it's being able to find opportunities to also include nutritious options. This time of year, there are so many fresh fruits and vegetables that are in season. Buying in season increases the fresh use. It didn't come from super far away and we lost shelf life that way. Buying in season, they tend to be a bit more nutritious as well. A lot of times more enjoyable. I don't know if you've ever had like a January strawberry. It's not quite the same as a strawberry in May, but so in season they're more flavorful as well. But buying in season produce, a lot of times you can get it a little more locally as well. Whether at your grocery store they're featuring local farms, or you go to a farmer's market and buy directly from the farmer. In produce, when you buy it that way, does tend to be more affordable as well. So we are going to talk a little bit about another way to cook them. So I have heads of romaine here. These are kind of smaller ones we have for our grill today. Has anyone, I'm gonna ask the audience first and then online, has anyone had grilled romaine before? 1, 2, yeah. Okay, what about online? Anyone have experienced that before? Okay, so what I'm doing, the recipe calls to have it, but in the spirit of trying to create a little more surface area for the grill, I'm gonna quarter these, and I'm going lengthwise with the cut so that they hold together. So, like this. I'm gonna do one more cut lengthwise though, so that there's some more surface area. In this kind of grilling here, we are not trying to cook them through. We just want to get the grill marks and the char on them, and then you could serve this as a wedge salad, or you could serve this as a individual like chunks, or cut it up and create a salad and dress it as well. So I'm gonna get these on the grill. I'm gonna brush them with olive oil first. You can use olive oil or avocado oil. For these grills, olive oil seems to be working just fine. Avocado oil can hold a little bit more heat. The higher the heat, higher temp cooking. Olive oil has a higher smoke point, so we'll have less of that of the smoking, and then the nutrients break down as well. So the recipe that I provided today, it really can be a base for it can be a base for a salad. You can sprinkle some seasoning on them and then serve them as is, or I created a salad dressing as well. So all these friends are going. So remember those seasoning blends we were talking about a little bit earlier? I created a Mediterranean blend with the red pepper flakes, the coriander, and the red pepper flakes, coriander, and basil. So I had dried basil from our recipe with the shrimp. I also bought fresh basil. I wish I could say I grew fresh basil, but it wasn't in the cards this year. But if you get fresh leaves, the serving size is about twice of what the dried version would be, or vice versa. So if it calls for 2 tablespoons of fresh basil, 1 tablespoon of dried is the conversion there. If you're cutting fresh basil, you can roll it. I'm gonna hold it up so you can see. You stack the leaves up and roll it lengthwise, and then you can go ahead and chop it. So, well, that didn't go as beautifully as I was hoping. We got some olive oil in it. For today, the dressing, I have in here lemon and olive oil. I did about twice as much olive oil as I did lemon. So I did about twice, and then 1 teaspoon of our seasoning blend in a jar. And you can shake it up, and you can use it as salad dressing throughout the week. So a pretty easy shake up and blend for that. So I know in whether you do wellness consultations, my way to healthy weight, a lot of times we talk about ways to minimize things like fat, salt, and sugar, and it's so easy to make your own salad dressing. I only used ingredients that I had to use in other cooking recipes, whether it was things we had on hand, we had red pepper flakes left over from a previous recipe, or the basil, lemon, olive oil, and it was so easy to mix up. And when these are done, we'll chop these up and you'll get a little drizzle on there as well. You can also add things like Parmesan cheese or feta cheese, stronger cheeses. Cheese does have a bit more fat and sodium in them, but with more flavorful cheeses, you can also use a whole lot less and still get the same effect flavor-wise too. Holly's coming around right now with the shrimp. Thank you. And then we just add in. So we will hop back in to So we did protein, we did our veggies. So let's talk a little bit more about really simple and easy side dishes that you could bring if you're invited to a cookout, or you can have made available if it is you hosting. So we talked about fresh and in-season produce being more nutritious. We get a longer shelf life out of it. A lot of times it tastes better and potentially more affordable as well. The other thing to consider too are the nutrient benefits that come with it. Fruits and vegetables are incredibly rich in fiber, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants. We recommend at least 5 serving fruits and vegetables a day, and this can be a really great way to get them in. Be as simple as a fruit salad or wedged up watermelon. It could be grilled pineapple or grilled fruits, which we're going to test out here in a minute. As far as veggies go, we can do grilled veggies. We can do salads. You can do raw carrot sticks, celery sticks, chopped up raw veggies as appetizer on its own with a dip or something like that, a homemade salad dressing. What is in season right now is coming to the end of strawberry season, watermelons in season in the summer, cherries are in season in the summer. I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old that just discovered cherries, so they need a part-time job because though less expensive when they're in season, still really expensive. I actually found a great deal at Aldi on cherries too. It's a little bit, it wasn't like $5 a pound. But cherries are in season, peaches are in season, all the berries, blueberries, blackberries, raspberries. Additionally, from the vegetables, zucchini, eggplant, those are really great grilled as well as the lettuces. Tomatoes are in season. Think about all the ways that those can be incorporated as side dishes, on the grill or off the grill when it comes to this time of year. So let's talk about our fruit recipe here. So we're going to do fruit skewers. Now, I've come across a lot of recipes for grilled peaches and pineapple, but we're also going to put strawberries on these skewers as well. So you can, to cut a peach, you can cut it around lengthwise like it's an avocado and twist it. I was having a hard time and I didn't want to show that earlier. So I'm cutting around it like an apple now, and we're going to just make it this way. So I'm just going to cut these into slices this way. And you can put, there's no real limit to what you can put fruit-wise on the grill. Some people really like grilled watermelons too, that combination of sweet and savory that way you can have. But we've got peaches here. I've got a strawberry, which I think we're going to know how to have. I cut the top off and then cut it in half real quick lengthwise, just so it's a little more friendly to put on a stick. And then we have pineapple. So I used to be incredibly intimidated to buy a whole pineapple because, like, how do you do that? How do you get it from here to here? Like, you can buy it really easily at the grocery store. And one recommendation that I recommend, this tool here, it cores the pineapple and cuts it, and you take it straight out. I'm gonna show you how it works. My sister sent this to me as a surprise. She ordered it from Amazon and sent it my way. I will find it and I will email all of you the link to it. It's a fireball. It does look like
I saw it at Aldi last week.
you go with that Aldi too? Well, I'm hoping to get like a sponsorship from the pineapple company. So what I'm doing is I'm cutting the top off of this pineapple. A couple things to think about when you're purchasing a pineapple. Color can be an indication of ripeness. The more yellow versus green are more ripe. If you squeeze it, it should be firm, but give a little bit of sponginess, and then you should be able to smell the pineapple fragrance as well. These are all great ways that are indicators of ripeness. And then you can see this one's really bright yellow. It's pretty ripe. So I cut the top off of this, and this has some ridging here that lets it cut in. So I line up the center of it with the core. And then I start twisting it with just like the slightest amount of downward pressure. It's not very hard at all. And you twist until you can start to feel when you hit the bottom. And then you just pull it over. Here, the section. And then you get rings. You can cut it into wedges, however you like it. And I usually set that straight into a Tupperware and cut it. Let me move this up open. I cut it straight down like this. And you can get chunks just like that. So easy. A couple things too with storing a pineapple. I have some that like watch me, like it starts to go from like yellow to brown and it's like, when are you going to use me? If you lay it on its side, the juice will run more towards the top. Gravity pulls the juices. You can lay it on its side and rotate it to keep it juicy and throughout too. So pineapple's evolution will go from pretty tart to super duper sweet. So if you like that tartness, having it a little bit more yellow green versus if you like your fruit super sweet, let it sit a little bit longer. And then again, just like the shrimp, soaking for about 20 minutes, a wooden skewer, and we're just gonna pop the peaches, the strawberries, and then a pineapple wedge right on, and these can go straight on the grill. Now, in the spirit of spice or season up your barbecue, I recognize the lack thereof here. Now, putting food on a grill is going to naturally add some smokiness, going to add some char to it. However, I didn't want to leave you guys without a little bit more options seasoning wise as well. So I grabbed some honey, and you can use agave as well. It's still has sugar in it, absolutely. A little bit lower glycemic index though than plain sugar. It's also a little bit sweeter, so sometimes you can get away with using less and getting the same sweetness. And then I squeezed a lemon into here, and then I cut up that fresh basil, again, just to show the difference, and mixed it in. And I'm letting it, you let it sit with fresh herbs. The longer they sit and marinate, the more flavor that's going to come out of them. Something I was also going to mention with grilling, things like dill, rosemary, thyme, those are specific herbs that can go in earlier in the grilling process. They can hold up to the heat a little bit better. You could even bundle the fresh herbs and set the meat directly on top of it if it's a grill like this, or if you have coals, you can set them on the coals and the essence of it will go up as well. So having let this sit here, the flavor is going to develop more. Herbs like mint, basil, those types, they are better to go at the end of the cooking process if you're dealing with high heat. They don't withstand the higher temperatures quite as well. So as they're grilling up, you guys are going to get one of each fruit as well. And we're going to add a little bit of this glaze to it too, just to get a little bit of that herb flavor to go there too. And again, very simple ingredients. A lot of things I just went with what we had on hand already. Another great combination that would have gone really well with fruit if you didn't have basil would be mint too. And mint, if you're my neighbor across the street, it's doing very well right now. So those are the different types. I know someone mentioned kebabs earlier, and these are very reminiscent of kebab type foods as well, just being on the skewer. So yeah. Okay, I'm going to take my gloves off here since I've touched all kinds of things. And then we're going to hop back into the presentation. I have a couple more things I wanted to note. One, we're going to plan if we're attending barbecues, and two, plan on food safety as well. So if you are invited for going to a barbecue, there's some general principles we completely recommend. If you don't know what's being served, calling and finding out can be a great way. That can kind of guide what you choose to contribute as well. If you don't want to contribute food, maybe it's a yard game, maybe it's decorations or something like that. Maybe you are bringing the fruit to throw on the grill or something like that. Just like the times of celebration, gatherings where there's food, we really encourage maintaining a normal eating pattern throughout. We don't want to get there starving, because we know that physiologically, when we skip meals or snacks and get to that point of starving hunger, we do not sense fullness as much. We are hungrier, and our body is asking for foods that are going to be quick calories. And oftentimes those are things that are very high in fat or sugar. So it's going to help you make a decision that can be more in line with health goals, and it'll be appealing as well than if you wait till you get hungry. So the other considerations can be finding ways to be active throughout the day. So whether it's parking down the block and walking there, or finding a way to be active before you get there as well. When you are at the barbecue, I recommend taking inventory of all of your food options and before you start to build your plate. And instead of doing kind of the grazing, snacking, small portions here and there, have a proper meal plate. In general, we recommend trying to make half your plate veggies or fruits and veggies. The other half is your starch. Maybe it's the bun, maybe it's potatoes, whatever, corn on the cob. And the final fourth of your plate is the protein. So there's some resources in your handouts to help illustrate that and some options that might be there too. So when it comes to foodborne illness, this type of year, especially with so many different types of foods being prepared, it's something to circle back to. So hand washing is paramount. So using soap, at least 20 seconds of hand washing before rinsing. Being mindful of cross-contamination. We touched on that a little bit. Separate cooked surfaces and cookware for raw versus cooked, for produce versus proteins. Lisa used 2 different sets of tongs for cooking the shrimp. One was designated for the undercooked shrimp and turning it, and the other one was designated for the cooked shrimp. So I'll just kind of some of these methods to avoid cross-contamination. Also, cooking to the required minimal internal cooking temperatures. I have a resource for that too, but different foods need different amounts of time on whether it's on the grill or in the oven to be safe to eat. And then watching out for storage as well. There's 2 considerations with storage. One is temperature. We want to stay outside what's called the temperature danger zone. That is from 40 to 140 degrees. So cold foods get stored under 40 degrees, while hot foods get held over 140 degrees. Storage can also be a risk for cross-contamination. So we're not leaving raw shrimp to open, to potentially drip down onto your prepared watermelon that's sitting underneath. So keeping things in sealed containers and starting at the top, the foods that are ready to eat and working your way down to the foods that are going to cook in your refrigerator as well. As far as time goes, foods can typically stay at room temperature 2 hours before they become at risk for foodborne illness. It is summer, it is hot. If it is 90 degrees or hotter outside and your food is outside, that time gets cut in half and it's 1 hour. So those things to kind of keep in mind. My family like sometimes keeps food out for a long time, and then my mom's like, "Do you want leftovers?" I was like, "You can give that to anyone. That's been out for 5 hours." So here's there's a resource in your handouts as well, but these are some more on the minimal internal cook temperatures. We have a thermometer here. They have all kinds for grilling and things like that. To make sure. The recommendation is temperature, it's not just visual done. So now I want to turn this over to Zoom and also the group to share. I want you to ask any questions, please. Was it good? Oh, good. We're going to be here a while, you guys. So if you need to come, we'll be here. I'm glad you guys. Anyone else in the room have a question or anything at all? What? Oh my. No, you go.
What is the way to start increasing your
Yeah.
what is a good recommendation on this thing,
To do that? Yeah. That's a really great question. The question was, what's a good way to start to decrease the salt and the sugar in your diet without just cold turkey cutting it out? Which is a really great recipe if you do try that way to not have it be sustainable too. You girls feel free to chime in too. One of the first things I think can be most telling is start to look at the labels under sodium to see where is it even coming from in your diet. Is it coming from snack type foods like chips or pretzels? Is it coming from deli meats or fast food and restaurant food? Those usually can be pretty high in salt as well. So I think it can be really helpful first to just figure out where it is coming from. And then kind of create a stepwise approach. You got choices. One is maybe I'll sub out one of my salty snacks for a piece of fruit or something that doesn't have salt in it. And doing it that way and getting used to that and working to slowly step down, but you guys feel free to chime in too. We all have different methods.
I would take the same approach, figuring out where those easy swaps are, so that you're not missing it quite so much. If you suddenly realize that you use full sodium soy sauce and you're cooking a lot, and there's an easy substitute to use a reduced sodium or a coconut amino, start finding those easy swaps. I think another tip that I love to share with my participants is that it takes about 3 to 4 weeks for your taste buds to start to acclimate. So a fun fact is that the taste buds that you have in your mouth right now have a lifespan of about 3 weeks. So if you stop salting your food today, for example, you'll notice that. But if you can stick with these changes over time, about a month from now, you're gonna have a whole new family of taste buds who's gonna readjust to that. So patience is a big tip too.
Yeah.
I think understanding that sugar is not just like your granular sugar or honey, and it could be like in the form of powder. You know,
Yeah,
I
so
think people that are like pre-diabetic.
exactly. So sugar isn't just the added sugars. Sugar is the end product of carbohydrates as well. And so doing like wellness consultations is a really great way to get a little bit more skilled eye on exactly what's coming in and getting those slight modifications for ways to make it work for what works for you. Because what works for one of you might not be it for the other one. And there's a lot of ways to do it, which is great. Can be a really frustrating answer that there's not one right way to do it, but it makes it a lot more flexible. Anyone else have any questions? What about in the chat? What questions are popping up there?
So, Miss Angie's interested in the My Way to Health You Weight program, but will be out of town during July orientation days. Is there an alternative to enroll in the program?
That's great. So being out of town, was the question they're out of town for orientation day? Yes. So the orientations are offered virtually or in person, but we also record them, just like our wellness workshops. So if you are not available to view them live, you can view the recording. It's a bit timely though, help me out here, from the time that they are, what's the turnaround time?
Sure. So I can certainly speak to that. So we're having our 2 orientations. We'll have Zoom options. We'll also have in-person options to come that week. And then we do have within about a 5 to 7 day window, we do have an application process and then a lottery, which then helps us with scheduling, because we often do have such a strong turnout and request for this participation that there's a wait. So all that to say, if you know that viewing that is relatively time sensitive, even if you can't join live, there's a short survey you fill out after. So that's what that time commitment would look like to begin enrollment program.
So if you can't attend live, you can view within the next 5 days or so to fill out the survey and respond. If the timing just doesn't work out for you, we do another cohort will start in January. So you could view this orientation and be added to the wait list and then good to go for the January.
I always say, if you have questions, just email us. We're incredibly accommodating. We want to make this as easy and accessible for you to participate. So there is our email address. Feel free to reach out to our team and we can make sure that you're getting the material that you need.
What other questions do you guys have?
So Ms. Danielle is asking, are there less typical proteins that you would recommend trying out, something beyond steak, chicken, pork, steaks, or hot dogs?
Yeah, so different protein options beyond like chicken, beef, pork, shrimp, things like that. Those are your meat proteins, certainly, but protein comes in a lot of forms. You can get protein from plant sources as well, things like beans and lentils. In the recipes, we have a really nice like bean chickpea salad to have inside instead of maybe like an egg or potato salad, and it's going to be rich in fiber and protein. So those plant proteins can be really great. Grain wise, quinoa is pretty rich in protein as well. So those could be options. Eggs are awesome proteins and they cook really quickly. So you can have a lot of versions of that available, maybe with a cookout or maybe just to slowly incorporate in your diet. and then dairy, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese in general is going to be high protein. The consideration is trying to choose lower fat options because of that creative fat content.
I think one thing I'll say to keep your proteins interesting is just thinking about the way that you're flavoring them. Using some of these seasonings that Erin provided us with today, or also marinades, can just really change up what you're doing. I love to get like a big family pack. It's a very economical choice to get that of your chicken breast. But then I'll whip up 2 different marinades. I'll do like a left herb marinade, and then I'll do like a chicken lime marinade. And it doesn't feel like I am burnt out on that same chicken all week long because I've really changed up the way that it's seasoned. And maybe I'll pair it with some different sides, some hot, some cold. So I think revisiting some of these tried and true lean proteins just in different flavor combos can really just keep things interesting.
What else is in the chat, Ellie? Any other questions?
Yes, Connie is asking, are there any health benefits to dry herbs, spices as compared to fresh?
That's a great question. A lot of the nutrition benefits can be preserved. As far as trying to think off the top of my head, any I know for sure fresh wise.
Yeah, I'm having a tough time thinking about if there is any optimal form, fresh versus dried. I will say from a flavor potency, you definitely want to make sure that you're storing dried herbs and spices well, so that they not only are that they're not losing their flavor potency. And I imagine that the health benefits would go along with that too. So pay attention to that best by date if you've opened it. If you're cooking stovetop, don't shake right over that. Any kind of steam that might be getting into your canister is going to be degrading the spice or the herb. So it's worth taking that extra teaspoon, measuring it out, and then sprinkling it on so that you're not getting moisture trapped in there. And then keeping it in a cool, dark space. So I'd recommend not keeping a visible spice rack right next to your stove or your cooktop where that's generating a lot of heat and moisture. Repurpose some of your cabinet space. Worth keeping them out of that to probably preserve some of the health benefits as well.
Any other questions?
That was our last question in the chat.
Okay, anything else come up in the room? Yeah.
I was like, I'm a vegetarian, so like when I go to these barbecues, I'm always like, oh, I'm not gonna hamburgers and hot dogs, but like black bean burgers are like very popular. You can get from the seasoned and processed ones, but make them yourself are really easy. That's another way to incorporate vegetables. Like I found a great recipe that is my like go-to every year. Making black bean burgers with like shredded zucchini. And then you can make it spicy and put different spices more bland, and then quinoa, like that.
Yeah. So the comment was using black bean burgers and making them at home can be a really great way to get veggies in and the protein. You can use it in a lot of ways, and then doing quinoa based salads too can help get some more protein in too. Those are great. Right. Well, thank you all so much for being here today. I hope you got at least one thing that was useful to take away. The recording is going to be posted for those of you who couldn't get enough of this content to rewatch again, but we're also going to send a survey out today. I would love your feedback on what you enjoyed or anything that could make the experience more enjoyable as well. So keep an eye out for that too. Thank you guys so much. Bye.
Trash and recycling, that's on your way.